Now, the controversial Tavistock Gender Identity Development Service is closing for good this weekend, 2 years after a damning report highlighted major concerns. Our reporter Ray Addison has been looking back at the history of the NHS Gender Clinic.
The Tavistock Gender Identity Clinic will finally close its doors on Sunday. It follows severe criticism that it gave some of the most vulnerable members of society treatments that lacked sufficient safety or clinical effectiveness. It was the brainchild of psychiatrist Dr. Domenico Decelli, inspired by a single case of a teenager who claimed she was a boy in a female body.
He told me, when I was a child, I had all these differences, and my parents should have seen it. Why didn't they do anything about it? But that implanted in me the idea of creating a service for children and adolescents.
From its launch in 1989, with just a handful of referrals, it grew into the largest children's gender clinic in the world, referring around 2,000 for puberty blockers, but failing to follow up to see how they were doing. It also ignored the concerns of staff, some of whom became whistleblowers. Formal concerns were first raised in 2005 by therapist Sue Evans.
My concerns back then was actually around a 16-year-old child that I had seen referred after 4 sessions for a hormone therapy treatment. It is strange that such a powerful medication could be given on such a small level of assessment.
Yes.
2/3 of the clinic's patients were female, and they often had an underlying mental health condition. But the clinic stopped providing therapy and focused on a medical pathway. There was also concern that patient support groups, such as transgender charity Mermaids, had undue influence, which they've denied. In 2018, a devastating report by Dr. David Bell concluded that the service was not fit for purpose. The following year, a legal challenge brought by former patient Kira Bell questioned if children could properly consent to treatment. That ultimately failed, but it caught the attention of the media.
My hope was that outside of the noise of the culture wars, the report would shine a light on this harmful experiment on vulnerable children and young people. These drugs seriously harm me in more ways than one, and they have harmed many more, particularly young girls and women.
In September 2020, NHS England announced an independent review by Dr. Hilary Cass. She found that options other than gender transitioning were not being explored, and staff felt under pressure not to question parents' and children's assumptions. Finally, in July 2022, NHS England announced it would be closing the clinic and opening new regional services offering psychosocial and psychological support, but not medical. For some, the closure will come too late, their bodies forever changed by an NHS service which failed to protect them.
Well, an excellent report on a hugely controversial talking point there. Ray Addison joins us now from outside the Tavistock Clinic. Great work there, Ray. The big question now is there are more than 15,000 people, though, Ray, waiting for gender identity clinic appointments. With the Tavistock closing, what happens to them now?
Well, absolutely. That number, Martin, that 15,000, they're actually waiting for their first appointment. So they haven't been had that very first consultation at all. And so NHS England has replaced the gender clinic here at Tavistock with a regional service. So the plan ultimately is to have 8 clinics all around the regions of England to provide those services for people specifically where they're based. Now, at the moment, only 2 of those regional services are in operation, or rather one. The Great Ormond Street Hospital here in London is operating a service, and they're going to see a deluge of people coming onto their waiting lists. And also a second hub is about to open in the northwest of England. That's going to be managed by Alderhay Hospital. Also, what we're seeing, and this has raised some concern, you saw Sue Evans in that report there, the original whistleblower back in 2005. There's been a number now of private clinics that are opening or due to open, including some opened by former staff who worked here at the service. And there's concern, Sue certainly telling me that she was concerned that this they're obviously still allowed to prescribe these puberty blockers, and they're kind of still going along, some, maybe not all, with the ideology rather of that Tavistock was previously operating under. Now, of course, many people have been upset at this closure. You know, there was those that think that the clinic here was providing an absolutely essential service, possibly even life-saving for young people who are determined to transition and just feel like they can't go on unless they transition to another gender. Others, of course, believe it was consumed by that ideology that I mentioned, this affirmation approach, agreeing with the young person, yes, you're in the wrong body and we're going to help you change. However, there's that concern that it just overrode the need, the clinical need for proper medical ethics and standards. Ultimately, we know here at Tavistock children were receiving life-changing puberty blockers, life-changing hormone treatments instead of psychological treatment. No psychological treatment at all for the young people to explore other options other than transitioning. And right now, 15,000 people are waiting on that list, and they'll be waiting for these services around the UK.
Ray Addison, excellent report on a complex issue from outside the Tavistock clinic. And a lot of people will be arguing that perhaps we should have undergone more thorough psychological analysis and appraisal before going down the route of hormones and surgery. Great talking point to go over there.